Get out! All of you get out now! Ashley Morgan's voice echoed through the glass conference room as papers scattered across the mahogany table. Her face was red with anger and embarrassment. This deal was supposed to be done weeks ago. The executives from Harrison Industries packed their briefcases in silence. Mr. Harrison himself shook his head as he walked past Ashley. "Your father would be ashamed," he whispered, loud enough for everyone to hear. Ashley stood alone in the room, watching the city lights of Manhattan twinkle below. At 28, she had everything money could buy, but she couldn't close a single business deal. This was the 5th major contract she had lost in 3 months. Her father's billion-dollar empire was slipping through her fingers like sand. The cleaning crew began to enter the building for their night shift. Ashley barely noticed the older black woman pushing her cart down the hallway. Dorothy Baker had been cleaning these offices for 20 years, watching powerful people come and go. She had seen Ashley's father build this company from nothing, treating every employee like family. Tonight, Dorothy would speak words that would change everything. If you're someone who appreciates emotional stories about second chances and finding wisdom in unexpected places, we'd love for you to like and subscribe. There's more to come that might move you too. Ashley Morgan sat in her father's old office, staring at the family photo on the mahogany desk. Richard Morgan smiled back at her, his arm around a young Ashley at her college graduation. 3 years had passed since his sudden heart attack, and 3 years since she inherited Morgan Industries. 3 years of watching everything he built slowly crumble in her hands like sand through her fingers. The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the 52nd floor, casting long golden shadows across the expensive Persian carpet. Ashley's phone buzzed constantly with messages from board members, lawyers, and angry investors. The red notification numbers kept climbing higher. 15 missed calls, 37 unread emails. She ignored them all, letting the phone vibrate against the polished wood of her father's desk. "Miss Morgan?" Her assistant Jennifer knocked softly on the heavy oak door. "The board meeting starts in 10 minutes. Ashley didn't look up from the contracts scattered across her desk like fallen leaves. Each one represented a failed deal, a missed opportunity, a disappointed partner who would never trust Morgan Industries again. The Harrison Industries contract alone was worth $200 million. Gone. The Peterson Group deal that could have saved their manufacturing division. Also gone. The Westfield Properties partnership that her father had dreamed of for years. Dead in the water. "Tell them I'll be there when I'm ready," Ashley said, her voice flat and tired. Jennifer hesitated in the doorway. She had worked for Richard Morgan for 15 years before his death, watching him build relationships with everyone from CEOs to maintenance workers. She remembered when this office was full of laughter, when employees felt comfortable walking in with ideas and concerns. The walls had been covered with photos from company picnics, employee graduations, and charity events. Now the walls were bare, except for expensive paintings that Ashley had hung to make the space feel more professional. It felt cold, empty, like a museum displaying the remains of a once great company. "Miss Morgan, they're talking about calling an emergency vote," Jennifer said quietly, wrapping her cardigan tighter around her shoulders. "Some board members think maybe it's time for new leadership." Ashley's head snapped up, her green eyes flashing with the same anger that had destroyed her last 3 business meetings. Her perfectly styled blonde hair was pulled back in a tight bun that made her look older than her 28 years. The expensive suit she wore cost more than most people made in a month, but it couldn't hide the exhaustion in her face or the fear in her eyes. "New leadership? This is my company. My father built this from nothing, and he left it to me, not to them. Not to David Chen, not to Margaret Foster, not to any of those vultures who are circling around waiting for me to fail. Yes, ma'am. But the Harrison Industries deal was worth $200 million, and the Peterson Group contract last month was supposed to save our manufacturing jobs. The employees are starting to worry about their futures." "I know what happened!" Ashley stood up so fast that her leather chair rolled back against the window with a soft thud. "I don't need you or anyone else reminding me of my failures. I live with them every single day." Jennifer stepped back, her hand moving instinctively to the door handle. This wasn't the confident young woman who had graduated top of her class from Harvard Business School. This wasn't the daughter Richard Morgan had been so proud of, the girl who used to spend summers working in different departments of the company to learn the business from the ground up. Something had changed in Ashley since she took over, something that made her push people away instead of bringing them together like her father had done. "I'll tell them you'll be right there," Jennifer said, closing the door softly behind her and leaving Ashley alone with her thoughts and failures. Ashley walked to the window, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor. She looked down at the busy streets of New York 52 floors below. People rushed along the sidewalks like ants, each one focused on their own goals, their own problems, their own struggles to survive in a city that never slept. Yellow taxis weaved between buses and delivery trucks. Street vendors sold hot dogs and pretzels to office workers on their lunch breaks. From up here, they looked so small, so unimportant. Maybe that was her problem. Maybe she had forgotten that those small people were the ones who made businesses successful. Her father had always said that a company was only as strong as the people who believed in its mission. Her phone rang, the shrill sound cutting through her thoughts like a knife. The caller ID showed, David Chen, board chairman. Ashley, where are you? David's voice was tense, strained. She could hear other voices in the background, the low murmur of the board members waiting for her arrival. We've been waiting for 20 minutes. I'm coming, David. Just give me a moment to collect myself. We don't have moments to spare. The Peterson Group is considering legal action for breach of contract. Their lawyers sent a letter this morning. The Harrison deal is completely dead. Marcus Webb called them personally to offer a better partnership. And now I'm hearing rumors that Blackstone Industries is trying to buy out our smaller investors, picking them off one by one. Ashley closed her eyes, feeling the weight of her father's legacy pressing down on her shoulders like a heavy blanket. Blackstone Industries was their biggest competitor, led by Marcus Webb, a man who had tried to buy Morgan Industries several times when her father was alive. Richard had always refused, saying the company was more than just money and profit margins. It was about the people who worked there, the families they supported, the communities they served, and the values they upheld. Let them try, Ashley said, trying to inject confidence into her voice even though her hands were shaking. We're not going anywhere. This company has survived recessions, market crashes, and industry changes. We'll survive this too. Ashley, listen to me carefully. David's voice softened, taking on the patient tone of someone trying to explain something important to a child. He had been Richard's best friend and business partner for over 20 years. They had started their careers together as young accountants at a small firm downtown. Your father was a great man, a visionary leader, but he's gone. You can't run this company on his reputation anymore. The business world has changed. You need to learn how to lead people, not just give orders from the top floor. I know how to lead, Ashley said, but even as the words left her mouth, they sounded hollow and unconvincing. Do you? When's the last time you walked through the office floors below us? When's the last time you talked to our employees? Not just the executives in suits, but the people who actually do the day-to-day work that keeps this company running. Your father knew every single person who worked here. He knew their names, their children's names, their dreams and fears. He knew who was getting married, who was having a baby, who was struggling to pay for their parents' medical bills. Ashley felt a knot forming in her stomach, a cold realization spreading through her chest like ice water. She couldn't remember the last time she had left the executive floor, except to go to meetings with other companies, or to attend business dinners at expensive restaurants. The lower floors were just places where work got done by people she paid to do jobs. She knew their job titles and their salaries, but she didn't know them as human beings with hopes and dreams and problems. I'll be right there, David. Don't start without me. She hung up and grabbed her jacket from the back of her chair. The walk to the boardroom felt longer than usual, like she was walking through quicksand. The hallways seemed quieter, emptier than she remembered. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting everything in a harsh, cold light. She passed several employees in the hallway, but none of them made eye contact. They just nodded politely and kept walking, their conversations dying as she approached and resuming after she passed. She realized with a shock that they were afraid of her, or at least afraid of what she represented. Job cuts, company changes, uncertainty about their futures. The boardroom was full when Ashley arrived, 12 faces looking up at her with expressions ranging from disappointment to barely concealed frustration. These were men and women who had believed in her father's vision, who had helped build Morgan Industries from a small accounting firm into a billion-dollar empire. Now they sat around the polished conference table like judges preparing to deliver a verdict. Gentlemen, ladies, Ashley said, taking her seat at the head of the table where her father had sat for 25 years. The leather chair still smelled faintly of his cologne. I know we've had some setbacks, but every business goes through difficult periods. We just need to stay focused and... Setbacks? A voice came from the speakerphone in the center of the table, cutting through Ashley's words like a sharp blade. The voice was smooth, confident, and sickeningly familiar. Ashley's blood ran cold as she recognized Marcus Webb, the CEO of Blackstone Industries and her father's biggest rival. Why is he on this call? Ashley looked around the table, her eyes moving from face to face, searching for answers in their uncomfortable expressions. David Chen cleared his throat, avoiding Ashley's gaze. His tie was loosened, and there were dark circles under his eyes. He looked like a man who hadn't slept well in weeks. Marcus reached out to us yesterday with a proposal. Given our current financial situation, the board thought we should at least listen to what he has to say. Hello, Ashley. Marcus's voice filled the room through the high-quality speakers. Even through the phone, his tone carried the smugness of a man who knew he was winning. I was sorry to hear about your recent challenges with the Harrison Industries deal, and the Peterson Group contract, and the Westfield Properties partnership. Your father was a great man, a true visionary, but business is business. The market doesn't care about sentiment or family legacy. Ashley gripped the arms of her chair so tightly that her knuckles turned white. Get to the point, Marcus. Very well. I'm prepared to offer a generous buyout for Morgan Industries. $15 billion for the entire company, including all assets, intellectual property, and existing contracts. Your shareholders would make a substantial profit, and your employees would have job security under the Blackstone umbrella. It's a win-win situation for everyone involved. The number hit Ashley like a physical blow. $15 billion. It was more money than she could spend in 10 lifetimes, enough to secure her future and the futures of everyone in the room. But it would also mean the end of everything her father had built, everything he had believed in. Over my dead body, Ashley said through gritted teeth, her voice low and dangerous. Ashley, be reasonable, said Margaret Foster, the longest-serving board member and one of her father's oldest friends. Margaret had been like a second mother to Ashley growing up, attending her school plays and graduation ceremonies when Richard was traveling for business. Now she looked tired and worried, her gray hair pulled back in a neat bun that couldn't hide the stress lines around her eyes. We've lost 3 major contracts in 4 months. Our stock price has dropped 37% since the beginning of the year. The financial reports show we're bleeding money faster than we can bring it in. Maybe it's time to consider all our options before we lose everything. Ashley looked around the table at faces she had known since childhood. These people had been like family when her father was alive, gathering for holiday parties and summer barbecues at the Morgan estate. Now they were talking about selling everything he had worked for to his biggest rival, the one man Richard had refused to do business with on principle. You're talking about selling out, Ashley said, her voice rising with emotion. My father built this company on the idea that business could be about more than just profit. We support local communities. We provide good jobs with fair wages. We invest in education and environmental programs. Marcus Webb cares about none of that. He'll fire half our workforce within 6 months and move operations overseas to save money. That may be true, said Robert Martinez, the chief financial officer who had joined the company 5 years earlier. His laptop was open in front of him, showing spreadsheets full of red numbers. But sentiment doesn't pay the bills. We have obligations to our shareholders, to our employees, to our creditors. If we continue on this path, we'll be forced into bankruptcy within 18 months. At least with Marcus's offer, people get something instead of nothing. Exactly, Marcus's voice came through the speaker again. I understand this is emotional for you, Ashley. Richard was like a father figure to many people in this industry. But emotions don't change the reality of balance sheets and profit margins. My analysts have gone over your financial records, and frankly, I'm being more than generous with my offer. Given your current trajectory, the company might not be worth half that amount by next year. Ashley felt like the walls of the boardroom were closing in around her. The faces of the board members seemed to blur together, their voices becoming a distant hum. She thought about her father's office upstairs, about all the photos he had kept of company events and employee celebrations. She thought about the manufacturing plant in Ohio, where 3 generations of the same families had worked, building products they could be proud of. She thought about the scholarship program her father had started for underprivileged students, and the environmental cleanup projects the company had funded in communities across the country. I need time to think, she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. Time is a luxury you don't have, Marcus replied immediately. The market is moving fast, and opportunities like this don't wait around. My offer is good for 48 hours. After that, well, who knows? Your stock might be worth even less, and I might not be feeling so generous. The call ended with a soft click, leaving the room in uncomfortable silence. The hum of the air conditioning system seemed unnaturally loud. Outside the windows, the city continued its relentless pace, unaware that the future of thousands of jobs was being decided in this sterile conference room. One by one, the board members filed out, gathering their papers and briefcases with the efficient movements of people who had important places to be. They murmured polite goodbyes and promised to be available if Ashley needed to discuss anything. But their body language told a different story. They had already made up their minds. David was the last to leave, lingering by the door like he wanted to say something but couldn't find the right words. Your father would want you to do what's best for the company, he finally said, his voice heavy with regret. Not what's best for your pride. Ashley didn't answer. She stared out the window at the city below, watching the tiny figures of people going about their daily lives. Somewhere out there were Morgan Industries employees heading home to their families, unaware that their jobs might disappear within 48 hours. Somewhere out there were communities that depended on the company's charitable contributions, students whose educations were funded by Morgan scholarships, environmental projects that protected clean water and air for future generations. After David left, Ashley remained in the empty boardroom for another hour, surrounded by the ghosts of better times. The walls were covered with framed photos from the company's history. Her father shaking hands with world leaders, ribbon-cutting ceremonies for new facilities, award ceremonies recognizing Morgan Industries for corporate responsibility and environmental stewardship. Group photos from company picnics where executives and janitors stood together, all smiling like they were part of something bigger than themselves. That night, Ashley worked late in her office, trying to find some miracle solution in the financial reports and market analyses that covered her desk. The numbers told the same story from every angle. The company was failing, and she was running out of options. The building around her grew quiet as the day shift went home to their families. The executive floors emptied out, leaving only the soft glow of emergency lighting in the hallways. But as the evening deepened into night, Ashley began to hear new sounds. The gentle hum of vacuum cleaners on the floors below. The soft voices of the cleaning crew as they moved through the building, emptying trash cans, wiping down desks, and restoring order to the chaos of the business day. For the first time in months, Ashley realized she wasn't alone in the building. There were other people here, working quietly and efficiently, while the rest of the city slept. She had never really thought about the night shift before. They were just part of the building's operation, like the heating system or the elevator maintenance crew. But tonight, as she sat surrounded by the evidence of her failures, their presence felt oddly comforting. While she struggled with million-dollar decisions and corporate politics, they simply did their jobs, one task at a time, one floor at a time. Around midnight, Ashley heard footsteps in the hallway outside her office. She looked up from her laptop screen, her eyes burning from hours of staring at spreadsheets and financial projections. Through the frosted glass of her office door, she could see the shadow of someone pushing a cleaning cart. Ashley rubbed her tired eyes and glanced at the clock on her computer screen. 12:47 a.m. The building felt different at night, quieter but somehow more alive. The sounds of the cleaning crew moving through the floors created a gentle rhythm that was oddly soothing after the harsh chaos of board meetings and failed negotiations. She pushed back from her desk and walked to the door, curiosity getting the better of her exhaustion. Through the frosted glass, she could see the silhouette of someone working methodically, moving from office to office with practiced efficiency. Ashley had never really paid attention to the cleaning staff before. They worked when she wasn't there, invisible hands that made sure everything was perfect when she arrived each morning. Ashley opened her door and stepped into the hallway. An older black woman was emptying the trash can outside the conference room where, just hours earlier, the board had discussed selling her father's company. The woman wore a dark blue uniform with Dorothy embroidered on the pocket. Her gray hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and despite the late hour, she moved with purpose and dignity. "Oh!" Dorothy looked up, startled to see someone on the executive floor so late at night. "I'm sorry, Miss Morgan. I didn't know anyone was still here. I can come back later if you need privacy." "No, it's fine," Ashley said, surprised by the woman's respectful tone. Most people who worked in the building seemed nervous around her, but Dorothy spoke with the calm confidence of someone who had seen it all. "You're Dorothy, right?" Dorothy smiled, a warm expression that transformed her entire face. "Yes, ma'am. Dorothy Baker. I've been cleaning these offices for 20 years now. Started here when your father first moved the company to this building." 20 years. Ashley tried to process that information. This woman had been here longer than some of the executives on the board. She had probably seen the company grow from a medium-sized business to the empire it was today. She had witnessed every triumph and every challenge. "You knew my father?" Ashley asked, leaning against the doorframe. Dorothy's expression softened and she paused in her work. "Oh yes, Mr. Richard was a good man. A real good man. He never walked past without saying hello, asking about my family. He knew I had 3 grandchildren. Knew when one of them graduated high school. Knew when my husband was sick with cancer 5 years ago." Ashley felt a strange tightness in her chest. She realized she didn't even know Dorothy had a husband, let alone that he had been ill. Is your husband okay now?" "He passed 2 years ago," Dorothy said simply, without self-pity or anger. "But Mr. Richard, he made sure I had extra time off during those hard months. Never docked my pay. Never made me feel like I was causing problems. He said family comes first, always. The hallway fell quiet, except for the distant hum of the building's ventilation system. Ashley stared at Dorothy, trying to imagine her father having these kinds of conversations with employees. She realized that while she had been focused on board meetings and financial reports, there was an entire world of people in this building that she knew nothing about. "How many people work the night shift?" Ashley asked. "About 15 of us," Dorothy replied, returning to her work but keeping the conversation going. "We clean all 52 floors, maintain the building systems, handle security rounds. Most of us have been here for years. We're like a family looking out for each other." Ashley watched Dorothy work, noting the care she took with each task. She didn't just empty trash cans. She straightened papers that had fallen, adjusted chairs, made sure everything was exactly as it should be. There was pride in her work, even though she probably thought no one would ever notice these small details. "Dorothy, can I ask you something?" Ashley said suddenly. "What do you think about the company, about how things are going?" Dorothy stopped what she was doing and looked directly at Ashley. For a moment, her professional mask slipped, and Ashley could see genuine concern in her eyes. "Miss Ashley, that's not really my place to say. Please, I want to know. I need to know." Dorothy was quiet for a long moment, weighing her words carefully. She had survived 20 years in corporate America by knowing when to speak and when to stay silent. But something in Ashley's voice, a vulnerability that reminded her of the young woman she used to see visiting her father's office during college breaks, made her decision. "People are scared," Dorothy said finally. "The day shift workers, they talk. They hear things. They know about the lost contracts, the board meetings. They see executives looking worried, having hushed conversations in the hallways. Some folks are already updating their resumes, looking for other jobs." Ashley felt like someone had punched her in the stomach. While she had been focused on high-level strategy and financial negotiations, real people with real families were worried about their futures. "What else do they say?" "They remember how things used to be," Dorothy continued, her voice gentle but honest. "Your father. He used to walk through every department at least once a month. Not for inspections or meetings, just to talk to people. He knew when someone's kid was starting college, when someone bought their first house, when someone's mom was in the hospital. People felt like he cared about them as human beings, not just as employees." The words hit Ashley harder than any board member's criticism. She realized that in trying to fill her father's shoes, she had focused only on the business side of leadership. She had forgotten that a company was made up of people, not just profit margins and market shares. "Dorothy, what would you do if you were in my position?" Ashley asked, the question surprising even herself. Dorothy set down her cleaning supplies and really looked at Ashley for the first time. She saw a young woman who was drowning in responsibilities she wasn't prepared for, carrying the weight of thousands of jobs and her father's legacy. Dorothy had raised 3 children of her own, and she recognized the look of someone who needed guidance, but was too proud or scared to ask for it. "Miss Ashley, your father used to say something to me when we'd talk during his late nights here. He'd say that the most important decisions couldn't be made from behind a desk. They had to be made with your heart and your feet." "What does that mean?" "Your heart tells you what's right, and your feet take you to the people who can help you figure out how to do it. Your father never made a big decision without talking to the people it would affect. Not just the executives, but the folks who actually do the work, the people who answer the phones, who build the products, who keep the lights on." Ashley thought about the upcoming vote, about Marcus Webb's offer, about the 48-hour deadline that was ticking away like a time bomb. Every instinct told her to reject the buyout, but every financial report told her she was failing. She was caught between her heart and her head, between her father's values and cold business reality. "But what if I'm not good enough?" Ashley asked quietly, voicing the fear that had been eating at her for months. "What if I can't save the company? What if everyone loses their jobs because I was too stubborn to sell when I had the chance?" Dorothy smiled, the same warm expression that had comforted her own children through countless crises over the years. "Child, being scared doesn't mean you're not good enough. It means you care. Your father was scared plenty of times, especially in the early days. But he didn't let fear make his decisions for him." "How do you know that?" "Because I was here during the recession of 2008, Dorothy said, moving closer to Ashley. "The company almost went under. Your father could have fired half the workforce to save money, like most companies did. The board told him to cut costs, lay people off, close the manufacturing plants. But instead, he took a pay cut, sold his vacation home, and found creative ways to keep everyone employed. He said a company that didn't take care of its people during hard times didn't deserve to survive the good times." Ashley had never heard this story. She was in college then, focused on her studies and social life, insulated from the business world by her father's protective nature. She had no idea how close they had come to losing everything, or how her father had sacrificed his own comfort to save other people's livelihoods. The company not only survived, Dorothy continued, it came out stronger. Because when people know you'll fight for them, they'll fight for you too. Loyalty isn't something you can buy with salary and benefits. It's something you earn by showing people they matter. For the first time in months, Ashley felt a spark of something that might have been hope. Not hope based on financial projections or market analysis, but hope based on something deeper and more fundamental. The idea that business could be about more than just numbers. That leadership could be about more than just making the right strategic decisions. Dorothy, would you mind if I asked you to show me around? I mean, really show me around the building? I realize I don't know anything about what happens here when I'm not around. Dorothy's face lit up with genuine pleasure. I'd be honored, Miss Ashley. There's a lot more to this building than what you see from the 52nd floor. As they walked toward the elevator, Ashley felt like she was seeing her father's company for the first time. Not as a collection of assets and liabilities, but as a community of people who had chosen to spend their lives building something together. The elevator descended slowly through the building, stopping at floors Ashley had never visited, despite working in the building for 3 years. Each floor revealed a different world, a different community within the larger Morgan Industries family. Dorothy moved through these spaces like a trusted friend, greeting the night shift workers by name and introducing Ashley as Mr. Richard's daughter. Their first stop was the 38th floor, where the customer service department operated a 24-hour call center. Ashley had known it existed, but she had never seen it in action. The floor was dimly lit except for individual desk lamps that created pools of warm light around each workstation. About a dozen employees sat at their desks, headsets on, quietly helping customers with problems, questions, and orders. This is Maria Santos, Dorothy said, approaching a middle-aged Latina woman who was typing notes while speaking softly into her headset. She's been here 12 years, works the overnight shift so she can be home when her kids get out of school. Maria finished her call and looked up, surprised to see Ashley standing beside Dorothy. Oh, Miss Morgan, I didn't expect to see you here so late. I'm learning about the night operations, Ashley said, feeling awkward and formal. Dorothy is showing me around. Maria smiled, but Ashley could see uncertainty in her eyes. Is everything okay? I mean, with the company. People have been talking, and we're a little worried. Ashley felt Dorothy's eyes on her, watching how she would respond to this direct question from an employee who had been loyal to the company for over a decade. This was the moment Dorothy had been preparing her for without saying it directly. This was her chance to either connect with people as her father had done, or to maintain the cold distance that had characterized her leadership so far. Things have been challenging, Ashley said honestly, surprising herself with her openness. We've lost some important contracts, and there are people who think we should sell the company. But I want to understand what that would mean for everyone who works here before I make any decisions. Maria's expression softened. Your father used to say that during tough times, we all had to pull together. He never made us feel like we were just expenses on a budget sheet. When my husband lost his job 3 years ago, Mr. Richard personally approved overtime shifts for me so I could cover our family's expenses until he found work again. Ashley felt that familiar tightness in her chest, the recognition of how much she still didn't know about her father's leadership style. I didn't know he did things like that. He did a lot of things like that, said James Wheeler, an older black man who overheard the conversation from the next cubicle. When Hurricane Sandy hit and my basement flooded, the company gave me an interest-free loan to help with repairs. When my daughter needed surgery, they made sure my health insurance covered everything without any hassles or delays. Dorothy touched Ashley's arm gently. Your father believed that taking care of employees during their personal crises was just as important as any business strategy. He said people who felt secure and supported would always give their best work. They moved on to the 25th floor, where the IT department maintained the company's computer systems and networks. The floor hummed with the quiet energy of servers and computers running critical overnight processes. A young man named Kevin Chen, who looked to be about Ashley's age, was monitoring multiple screens showing system performance metrics. Kevin's been working here since he graduated from college 5 years ago, Dorothy explained. His father is David Chen, your board chairman. Ashley looked at Kevin with new interest. She had known David for years, but she had never met his son or known that he worked for the company. You're David's son? Kevin nodded, then looked uncomfortable. Yes, ma'am. He talks about you sometimes, about how worried he is about the company's future. What do you think about the situation? Ashley asked, genuinely curious about this young man's perspective. Kevin hesitated, glancing at Dorothy as if asking permission to speak freely. Dorothy nodded encouragingly. Honestly, Miss Morgan, I think we've lost our way, Kevin said carefully. When I started here, there was this feeling that we were all working towards something bigger than just profit. The company sponsored coding boot camps for underprivileged kids, funded computer labs in schools, supported environmental tech projects. Now it feels like we're just trying to survive, and survival mode makes people think small instead of thinking big. Ashley was struck by Kevin's insight. What would thinking big look like? Your father used to challenge us to find solutions that helped the company and the community at the same time. Like when we developed that energy management software that helped small businesses reduce their electricity costs. It wasn't our most profitable product, but it helped thousands of small business owners save money during tough economic times. That kind of thinking made people proud to work here. Dorothy led Ashley to several more floors, each one revealing another piece of the Morgan Industries puzzle she had never seen. The accounting department, where night auditors processed payroll and ensured that every employee received accurate paychecks on time. The security office, where guards monitored the building and coordinated with local police to keep the surrounding neighborhoods safe. The mailroom, where overnight staff sorted and prepared thousands of pieces of correspondence that kept the company connected to customers, suppliers, and partners around the world. On each floor, Ashley met people who had stories about her father's kindness, his willingness to listen, his ability to make them feel valued and important. She heard about the employee scholarship program that had helped dozens of workers' children attend college. She learned about the company's partnership with local food banks and homeless shelters. She discovered that Morgan Industries had quietly funded medical research, environmental cleanup projects, and educational initiatives that had nothing to do with their core business, but everything to do with Richard Morgan's belief that successful companies had obligations to their communities. By 3 a.m., they had visited 15 floors, and Ashley's head was spinning with new information. They sat in the break room on the 20th floor, sharing coffee from a pot that Dorothy had made for the night shift workers. The room was simple and functional, with a few tables, chairs, and motivational posters on the walls. But it felt warmer and more alive than the expensive executive dining room where Ashley usually had her meetings. Your father used to come down here sometimes, Dorothy said, stirring sugar into her coffee. Especially when he was working late on big decisions. He said this room helped him remember what really mattered. Ashley looked around the modest space, trying to imagine her father sitting here with janitors and security guards and night shift workers, asking for their opinions on company policy. It seemed impossible, but then again, everything she had learned tonight seemed to contradict her assumptions about business leadership. Dorothy, I have to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me, Ashley said, wrapping her hands around the warm coffee mug. Do you think I can do this? Do you think I can lead this company the way my father did? Dorothy was quiet for a long moment, studying Ashley's face in the fluorescent light of the break room. She saw exhaustion, fear, and vulnerability. But she also saw something else. A willingness to learn, to admit mistakes, to consider perspectives she had never thought about before. Miss Ashley, your father didn't become a great leader overnight, Dorothy said finally. When he was young, he made plenty of mistakes. But he learned from them, and he never stopped trying to do better. The question isn't whether you can be exactly like him. The question is whether you can find your own way to care about people the way he did. But what about the business side? The contracts? The financial problems? The board pressure? Dorothy smiled, the expression that had become familiar and comforting over the course of their long night together. Child, business is just people making decisions about working together. If you can connect with people, really connect with them, you can find ways to solve problems that nobody else can see. Ashley felt something shifting inside her, a change in perspective that was both subtle and profound. For months, she had been trying to save the company by focusing on numbers, strategies, and high-level negotiations. But maybe the real solution was simpler and more complex at the same time. Maybe it was about remembering that every number represented a person. Every strategy affected real lives. Every negotiation was ultimately about human relationships. There's something I want to show you, Dorothy said, standing up and gathering their coffee mugs. One more stop before the night is over. They took the elevator down to the lobby, then walked through a door Ashley had never noticed before. It led to a small museum-like room that contained the history of Morgan Industries. The walls were covered with photos, newspaper clippings, awards, and artifacts from the company's 25-year journey. Ashley had never known this room existed. In the center of the room was a display case containing a simple wooden plaque. Ashley read the inscription. Success is not measured by what you achieve for yourself, but by what you make possible for others. Richard Morgan, founder. Your father had this made during the company's 10th anniversary, Dorothy explained. He said it was his mission statement, the thing he wanted people to remember about what Morgan Industries stood for. Ashley stared at the plaque, feeling tears sting her eyes for the first time in months. She had been so focused on preserving her father's financial legacy that she had forgotten about his moral legacy. She had been trying to save the company by becoming harder, more ruthless, more focused on the bottom line. But maybe the real path to saving it was to become more like the man who had built it in the first place. As the first hints of dawn began to lighten the sky outside, Dorothy looked at Ashley with the expression of someone who had planted a seed and was now waiting to see if it would grow. "Miss Ashley, there's something your father used to say when he was facing difficult decisions. 7 words that always helped him find his way." Ashley looked up, sensing that this moment was important, that whatever Dorothy was about to tell her would change everything. Ashley held her breath, sensing that whatever Dorothy was about to say would be the key to everything she had been struggling with. The museum room felt sacred in the early morning light, filled with the ghost of her father's presence and the weight of 25 years of company history. Dorothy moved closer to the display case containing her father's mission statement, her voice soft but clear in the quiet space. "Your father succeeded by serving, not commanding." The 7 words hit Ashley like a lightning bolt, simple yet profound in their clarity. She had been trying to command respect, command obedience, command success. But her father had built his empire by serving his employees, his customers, his community. "Serving," Ashley repeated, the word feeling foreign on her tongue. "But how can you lead by serving?" Dorothy smiled, seeing the understanding beginning to dawn in Ashley's eyes. "Child, true leadership isn't about being the person everyone looks up to. It's about being the person who lifts everyone else up. Your father understood that his job wasn't to be the smartest person in the room. His job was to help everyone else be smarter, better, stronger." Ashley thought about all the failed negotiations, all the board meetings where she had tried to prove she was in control, all the times she had made decisions without consulting the people who would be affected by them. She had been playing a role instead of being a leader. "What do I do now?" Ashley asked, feeling overwhelmed by the magnitude of her realization. "The board is expecting an answer about Marcus's offer in 18 hours. How do I convince them that we can turn things around when I don't even know where to start?" "You start with the truth," Dorothy said simply. "You tell them what you learned tonight. You show them that you're ready to lead differently, to serve the company instead of commanding it." As the sun rose over Manhattan, Ashley and Dorothy made their way back to the 52nd floor. The building was beginning to come alive with the early morning shift, people arriving with coffee and newspapers, ready to start another day of work. Ashley saw them differently now, not as employees or resources or line items on a budget, but as individuals with families, dreams, and stories. At 8 a.m. sharp, Ashley called an emergency board meeting. The same 12 faces gathered around the conference table, but this time Ashley didn't sit at the head. Instead, she stood at the windows, looking out at the city where thousands of Morgan Industries employees were beginning their workday. "Before we discuss Marcus Webb's offer," Ashley began, "I want to tell you about what I learned last night." For the next hour, Ashley shared everything Dorothy had shown her. She talked about Maria Santos, who worked nights to be there for her children during the day. She described Kevin Chen's vision for technology that served communities as well as shareholders. She told them about the scholarship programs, the community partnerships, the quiet acts of kindness that had built the company's reputation, one relationship at a time. "I realize I've been trying to save this company by focusing only on numbers and contracts," Ashley said, her voice growing stronger with each word. "But I forgot that businesses aren't built on spreadsheets. They're built on trust, loyalty, and the belief that we're all working towards something bigger than ourselves." David Chen leaned forward, his expression skeptical but interested. "Ashley, I appreciate what you're saying, but sentiment doesn't solve our financial problems. We still have lost contracts, declining revenue, and angry shareholders." "You're right," Ashley acknowledged, "but I think our financial problems are symptoms of a deeper issue. We stopped being the company that people wanted to work with, because we stopped being the company that cared about more than just profit." Margaret Foster spoke up, her voice gentle but concerned. "What exactly are you proposing?" Ashley took a deep breath, knowing that her next words would determine not just her own future, but the future of everyone who worked for Morgan Industries. "I'm proposing that we reject Marcus Webb's offer and commit to rebuilding this company the way my father built it in the first place. Not from the top down, but from the ground up. By listening to our employees, serving our customers, and remembering that our success is measured by what we make possible for others." The room fell silent. Robert Martinez, the CFO, shook his head slowly. "Ashley, that's a beautiful philosophy, but we need concrete plans, specific strategies. How do we win back the contracts we lost? How do we compete with companies that are willing to cut costs and maximize profits? We do it by being better, Ashley said with conviction. Better to work for, better to work with, better for the communities we serve. I spent last night talking to people who have been here for decades, people who remember when this company stood for something special. They have ideas, solutions, perspectives that we've been ignoring because we only listen to people in expensive suits. She turned to face the board directly. I'm asking for 6 months. 6 months to prove that leading by serving can work in today's business world. If we can't turn things around by then, I'll personally recommend that we accept whatever offer Marcus makes. The debate that followed was intense but respectful. Some board members were intrigued by Ashley's transformation and wanted to give her a chance. Others worried that 6 months was too long, that they might lose everything while chasing an idealistic dream. Finally, David called for a vote. All in favor of giving Ashley 6 months to implement her new approach? 7 hands went up. It wasn't unanimous, but it was enough. Over the next 6 months, Ashley transformed not just her leadership style, but the entire culture of Morgan Industries. She instituted monthly listening tours where she spent time in every department, asking employees for their ideas and concerns. She created cross-departmental teams that brought together executives and frontline workers to solve problems collaboratively. The customer service department, led by Maria Santos's insights, developed new protocols that increased customer satisfaction by 40%. Kevin Chen's team created innovative software solutions that helped small businesses while generating new revenue streams for Morgan Industries. The manufacturing division, working closely with environmental groups, developed sustainable practices that reduced costs and attracted environmentally conscious clients. Most importantly, Ashley learned to ask for help instead of trying to prove she had all the answers. She surrounded herself with advisors from every level of the company, creating a leadership team that reflected the diversity and wisdom of the entire organization. The transformation wasn't easy or immediate. There were setbacks, moments of doubt, and challenges that tested everyone's commitment to the new approach. But gradually, the company began to change. Employees who had been updating their resumes started bringing new ideas to work. Customers who had been considering other vendors renewed their contracts. Partners who had been hesitant to work with Morgan Industries reached out with new opportunities. The Harrison Industries deal that had seemed impossible to salvage was revived when Ashley personally flew to Chicago to meet with their leadership team. Instead of focusing on profit margins and contract terms, she talked about shared values and long-term partnership. Harrison Industries was impressed by Morgan Industries' commitment to community development and environmental responsibility, values that aligned with their own corporate mission. 6 months after that early morning conversation with Dorothy Baker, Ashley stood before the board to present the results of her new leadership approach. Revenue was up 22%. Employee satisfaction scores had reached all-time highs. The company had won 3 major new contracts and had been recognized with awards for corporate social responsibility. The numbers speak for themselves, Ashley said, presenting the quarterly report. But more importantly, we've become the kind of company that people want to work for and work with. We've remembered that business success and social responsibility aren't contradictory goals, they're complementary strategies. David Chen, who had been one of Ashley's harshest critics, smiled broadly. I have to admit I didn't think this would work, but you've proven that your father's approach can succeed in today's market. After the meeting, Ashley found Dorothy in the break room on the 20th floor, the same place where they had shared coffee and conversation 6 months earlier. Dorothy was preparing for another night shift, her uniform pressed and her cleaning cart organized with the same care and pride she had always shown. I wanted to thank you, Ashley said, sitting down beside the woman who had changed her life with 7 simple words. For everything you taught me, for helping me find my way. Dorothy smiled, the warm expression that had become like a beacon of wisdom in Ashley's life. Child, I didn't teach you anything you didn't already know. I just helped you remember who you were meant to be. My father was lucky to have you watching over his company, Ashley said. And now the company is lucky to have you leading it, Dorothy replied. Your father would be proud, not just of the numbers and the profits, but of the woman you've become. As Ashley walked back to the elevator, she passed the museum room where her father's mission statement was still displayed in its place of honor. Success is not measured by what you achieve for yourself, but by what you make possible for others. For the first time since inheriting the company, Ashley truly understood what those words meant. She had learned that the secret to business success wasn't commanding from the top of a tower, but serving from the heart of a community. Her father had built Morgan Industries not by being the smartest person in the room, but by helping everyone else be their best selves. And now, with Dorothy's wisdom guiding her and her father's values lighting the way, Ashley was ready to carry that legacy forward into the future. She had discovered that true leadership wasn't about having all the answers. It was about asking the right questions, listening to the right people, and remembering that success was always a team effort. The billionaire's daughter had finally learned the most valuable lesson of all, that the greatest fortune isn't measured in dollars, but in the lives you touch and the positive change you create in the world.